How have you been impacted by your community?
Well, in my area, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of gangs. So I think like as a kid, I'm more aware. I have to look out for myself and my siblings and my mom as well. So I feel like it impacted me like I guess in a mature way, giving me more awareness to my surroundings and knowing what times to get out the house and what times to just stay in.
Okay. Um, if you could change anything about your community, what would it be?
I would absolutely change the violence, and I would also change like how we view one another. Because, like I said before, many of us are strangers to each other, so we could like build bonds with one another and just know who's living next to us would really change a lot and like would help us understand what's going on and how to change the problems in our community.
Okay. Um, how do you think our community is viewed by others, like outside of our community?
Like a very, very bad community. I've talked to people who've lived in areas where it's much nicer. For example, in West Chicago and in downtown, and they view us as just like reserved and with just a lot of violence, like because that's what they see in the news and that's what they believe. Like coming down here, just crossing the bridge, they feel like they've just in such unsafe place that they're gonna get robbed, they're gonna get shot, etc.
Okay. All cities have like to deal with issues with violence, like New York, like Atlanta, like Los Angeles and all that. How does the issues of violence in Chicago compare to other major cities? Yeah.
I think it's not much different, although because I've never interacted with that violence myself. Like I don't live in those neighborhoods where in New York and the cities you mentioned. I don't live there, so I don't really know how it is firsthand. But in my community, I've seen the news reports with just a block away from where I live, kids been shot. So I feel like it's worse here because repeatedly on the news it talked about Chicago and Illinois and how bad it is, and you don't really mention New York because it's a much bigger, not much bigger city, but it's more known for like their luxuries that they have as the big buildings, etc. And here it's like Chicago with the violence. In my community, like I've said, I've seen kids get shot, stuff like that.
What are 3 top issues / concerns that you would like to address to start a dialogue with your community?
I think violence would be number 1, of course. If we can change that, then we can change the outlook on everyone's mind about us. I would say I would change. In our community, there's not many places to do. Many things to do in it because there's not a lot of places to do. There's mainly food restaurants, a couple, and they're the same base food. This is just Mexican food. And there's not as many groceries. There's a big market one, which is called Pete's Fresh Market, and a smaller one called La Cienega. And so I'd like to change that. I like to change the way, like, we view...
We're marketed?
Yeah, we're marketed, and the way we view it, because the reason there's not a lot of stores here is because they feel like there's not a big difference in culture. So that's what I would change.
If you were in charge of the media, like social media, what would you show and what would you change the perception of how people see your community? Like, what would you put out specifically to show, like, about our community that, like, would change people?
First of all, I wouldn't, like, stop showing violence. I wouldn't show it as much, but people have to know that there has to be a change. Because if you mute out the violence, if you block it out, then people will believe everything's okay, and it's not, because there's still going to be, just because people don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So I wouldn't show it as much, but I would still say, hey, we need help. We need to be supported a little bit better by the Chicago Police Department, but also show the beauty of it. I think there's a lot of kids in this neighborhood that, like, they don't know what goes on, so they're outside playing, and they're happy, and they feel like, it's a good place. And I would like to show that, like, kids playing at the parks, going to school, like, their bright future that they have ahead. Okay. I would like to show that.
What makes the East Side home? Last question.
What makes East Side home for me is the people. I've grown up here for the past, 10 years or so, and so I've made a lot of good connections with people that still live around here, and we're just 10 minutes away. So I think the people around make the East Side home for me. They make me feel welcome.